Let's just think back together. When Jesus healed the leper, he just reached out and he touched him and he was healed. When he raised Jairus' daughter from the dead, he just took her by the hand and he said, "Arise, little girl," and she arose. When Jesus healed the woman with the 12-year bleed, he didn't do anything essentially because it was her that reached out and touched his garment. When he cast the demon out of the Syrophoenician woman's daughter, he just said, "You answered well, go home, the demon's gone." He wasn't even in the same place as the little girl, but she went home and the demon was gone. And so the reason I bring that up is because in our reading today, we're going to see Jesus heal this deaf and this mute man, but he's going to use this really odd and obscure process. And so we're in Mark 7, verse 31. Again, departing from the region of Tyre and Sidon, he came through the midst of the region of Decapolis to the Sea of Galilee. Then they brought to him one who was deaf and had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to put his hand on him. And he took him aside from the multitude, and he put his fingers in his ears, and he spat and he touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed, and he said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, "be opened." And immediately his ears were opened, and the impediment of his tongue was loosed, and he spoke plainly. And then he commanded them that they should tell no one. But the more he commanded them, the more widely they proclaimed it. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, "He has done all these things well. He makes both the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." So just look at the really obscure process Jesus uses. First, it says he pulls them away from the crowds, away from the multitudes. Most of Jesus' miracles was done right there in the middle of everybody. But this time Jesus pulls them away from everyone. Then it says he puts his fingers in his ears and he spits. I think it's something like that. And then he touches his tongue. And he looks up to heaven and he moans. And he says, "Be opened." And immediately his ears were open. He was able to hear. And his tongue was loose. He was able to speak. So I look at a miracle like this and I think that's really cool. It's kind of neat. But why did Jesus do it? Why did he go through the process? Because on the surface, I think, okay, he's doing these rituals and he's playing the role of a healer. But then I think back to the things we talked about before, and I think he didn't need to do any of that. He just looked at the sea and he spoke, and the storm stopped. No rituals necessary. And so here's the two reasons why I think he could be doing something like this. Number one, he might be teaching somebody something. Later on, there's a very similar miracle where that's exactly what he's doing. Or number two, he's doing it because that's what the man needs him to do. You think about this man's situation. There would have been very few people who would have known something like sign language. And there wasn't hearing aids, there wasn't speech therapists. This man would have never heard his family say anything to him. And he would have never really been able to communicate anything back. And so he would have felt very alone, very isolated. And to add insult to injury, a man like this would have basically become a beggar. Because what else is he going to do for a living? So he made a situation, a spectacle, so that everybody would have pity upon him and they would feel compelled to give him money. Here's what I think Jesus is saying. It's no longer necessary for you to make a spectacle of yourself. I'm going to pull you away from the multitudes. We're going to do it. We're going to make this personal. And Jesus is saying, I know you can't hear. I know you can't speak. But I know you can feel. And so he does this sign language that he can feel. And I think he's saying, I know your problems. There's no reason to worry about those anymore. I'm here to help. The incredible thing about Jesus that the Bible reveals? Not only is he who he says he is, he's God come in the flesh and walk among us, that he knows our problems and that he's sympathetic towards them. He knows our biggest struggles and he wants to help. Not only does he want to help, but he can help. Jesus is our biggest friend in this life. And we can see all of that in the very reason why he came to this earth and he died. It's to fix our biggest problems so that we can find forgiveness of our sins, so that we can have the salvation for our souls.